views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try.
Breaking news, over 2,000 fetal remains discovered in unincorporated Will County. And now I guess the number is like 2,246 that they have found there. This is disturbing on so many levels. What possesses somebody to do this? Did he view the fetal remains as trophies? Was it some way of dealing with the guilt of what he had done to these unborn babies? At the end of the day, it's a sick mind.
This one patient had an abortion, young girl. She shows up in the emergency room. She had a bad infection. She was bleeding. She was hemorrhaging. And there were pieces of the baby and the placenta left inside. That's where I said, this is enough.
He said, when are you pro-life people going to do something about this abortionist here in town? He's butchering women. And then I said, Dr. Cly, we've been waiting for you to call.
The word abortion is out there.
Usually the docs who don't like someone, an authoritative body looking over their shoulder, are the doctors who know that they're on the fringe, on the edge, and have those complications occurring.
We had to eliminate the butchery of itinerant physicians who were coming to Allen County and leaving patients with no real way to fend for themselves.
Well, immediately that ordinance was challenged in court by the typical culprits.
My name is Betty Cockrum, and I am president and CEO of Planned Parenthood of Indiana.
It is dangerous, and I told my patients who were thinking about abortion, your life and your health will be at risk.
Is the problem with the abortion language, or is the problem with all of the language that exists in the ordinance?
I'm here because of the abortion language.
So this is a prime example of why voting pro-life matters. This is a character issue. If you can't get life right, what else can't you get right?
I'm here today because you are contemplating an ordinance that seeks to address a problem that does not exist.
His family was apparently cleaning the property or going through materials at the residence and came across this find and properly reported it to the authorities, and it was shocking.
They found fetal remains in the trunk of a vehicle.
We may never know why this was done.
Any idea if someone helped him store these fetuses?
He was still making his rounds to all three of his clinics, even though he'd been shut down for 5 years.
Well, there's a building right here in Fort Wayne. What's inside that building?
Yeah, well, the 3 offices that he functioned out of. So somebody needs to go. In fact, they need to go in there pretty quick before somebody has a chance to go in there and change stuff inside.
Welcome to my show. This is Patty Hunter, Patty's Page, and we have 2 guests on our interview, Mark and Amber Archer. Hello, welcome.
Hi there, Patty. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. So, how and when did you 2 meet each other?
How and when did we meet each other? Well, let's see, it would have been 2005, and we met while out one night. Random meeting out.
Love at first sight?
Not quite.
Not quite. She kind of ignored me for a while, but I chased after her.
I'm glad you did. Do you have a family?
We do. We have 3 daughters, 10, 7, and 1.5.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, so this is interesting times for us, having a house full of all of our kids all day for quarantine school. So.
Yeah. Bob and I are quarantined sometimes. Anyways, do you work together?
We have basically since we met. So it's been over how many years?
Well, he started working with me in 06.
Yeah.
So
Doing what?
Doing production work. So I've been doing film and television production for over 30 years. And so when we met, she kind of got drafted into several productions along the way, and we've shared an office basically since we met. And yeah, we work together every day, so we enjoy it. I guess we're kind of a rarity because a lot of couples don't get along well working together all day, but we love it. So
It's nice. It's nice to see that. You formed a film production company. What's it called?
Our ministry?
Yeah, our ministry is called Fearless Features, and so we actually have two different companies. One is our regular production company for doing for-profit work called Mark Archer Films, and then a couple of years ago we decided that we wanted to form a nonprofit production company to do ministry-related work, and that mission of that nonprofit has morphed, if you will, over the past few years. But about 2 years ago, it turned into a desire to tell the story of what is now the documentary film Inwood Drive, and so it was done through our nonprofit, and it was funded by us and a lot of donors. A lot of people have a lot of stake in seeing Inwood Drive get out and see the light of day.
Why did you call it Fearless Features?
Fearless. You say, why do we call it Fearless
Yeah.
Features? Well, the Lord calls us to go and be fearless and proclaim the gospel throughout the world. So that was really where that inspiration came from. It's a mission to share life, loss, and redemption through Christ.
What is your mission?
We believe stories change stories. All of us have a story to tell. And we're no different. And people around, we love stories. And that's how people come to know the Lord, is through other people's testimonies. And so that's really the foundation. And the mission is to share stories of life, loss, and redemption through Jesus Christ.
I was just going to say, when we first formed Fearless Features, we decided that we wanted to do short films, short documentary films, to specifically tell people stories of how they came to faith in Christ. And oddly enough, our very first episode was on Kathy Humbarger. And so she shared her story, and then we did another one, and we started developing a few more. And through our interaction with Kathy, we really came to realize that the story of what had happened here in Fort Wayne with her efforts and the efforts of so many through the years, the decades, battling against the abortion industry, and specifically George Klopfer, and how they managed to get him shut down, that was a story worth telling. And it was and is a story of faith. Not specifically how one individual came to faith, but a story of faith, church, and body of Christ, the believers uniting in prayer, and how all that came to be. And so the mission of Fearless Features went from short films to one really big film. And so that's what we've spent almost the past 2 years working on, just that story.
So how many short films have you done? Just a couple or more? Or?
Yeah, there's two other. We started Fearless Features in 2017, and then in 2018 is when we started the documentary.
Wow, 2018. How long did it take to get all the information?
It's almost 2 years. It's 20 months.
How did you do your research on Klopfer?
We went and talked to him.
Wow. How did you manage to get him out? I mean, to speak about himself.
It was interesting. It was really a combination of things. I mean, it started with some pretty extensive conversations with Kathy Humbarger, and she, of course, is just a wealth of information on all this. She's been on the front lines. And she started connecting us with other people who had been in the battle. And there's a lot of people that we talked to that gave us valuable information. They didn't all want to be part of the film necessarily. They didn't necessarily want to be on camera, but that's kind of part of the process of doing a feature-length film. You have to talk to a lot of people and then kind of winnow out who would be an interesting interview and who would be better just for information, and because you don't want to waste people's time.
That's true.
So it started with Kathy, and then we talked to Dr. Jeff Cly, and then we talked to Linda Zimmerman, who's a sidewalk counselor, and then talking to Ron Hollinsworth, a pastor at Statewood Baptist. And it really started off as just focusing on that battle there on Inwood Drive. I was fascinated by the battle specifically between Statewood Baptist and right behind them being Klopfer's clinic. And it didn't take too long after we talked to Kathy, and she was connecting us with all these other people that were involved, and she would make the introductions for us. And so we do what's called a pre-interview, where we go and talk to them and tell them what we're doing, and then ask them if they'll be on camera. And not everybody says yes, but
yeah, I hear you.
But everyone, for the most part, everybody was really happy to be part of it. And the way we got in touch with Klopfer was actually through Jeff Cly. So I did a pre-interview with him in his office, and he said, "Are you going to talk to Klopfer?" And I said I would if I knew how to get a hold of him, and he had Klopfer's cell phone number.
So his backup position.
Oh, backup. Oh, why did he become a backup for Klopfer?
So the reason and that's the big part of really what the film is about.
Yeah.
The reason that Klopfer got shut down started with Jeff Cly, who was an OBGYN in the Fort Wayne area. And what was happening was Jeff was seeing women come into the ER with a whole lot of really bad complications from botched abortions done by Klopfer. And he saw them over and over again. In fact, there was one girl in particular who came in, and by botched abortions, I mean they would come in and they still had pieces of the baby and the placenta still left inside them, and so they were coming in and they had problems like bleeding and hemorrhaging, and that really upset Jeff, and he ended up reaching out to Kathy Humbarger at Allen County Right to Life, now Right to Life in Northeast Indiana, and saying, "Why don't you Right to Life people do something about this?" And so that led them to start working together to draft legislation that would require itinerant physicians, which includes abortionists, to have a backup physician. And it got shot down at the state level, but then they tried it again at the county level, which is where Commissioner Nelson Peters came in. And it took another 2 years to get it passed at the county level. But what it did was it required itinerant physicians, including abortionists, but this could also include doctors at LASIK surgery, liposuction, things like that, who would only come in and do procedures and then leave. And they didn't have admission privileges at the hospitals. And so any complications that developed from their procedures that they had done, they would just tell people to go to the ER. And that's what Dr. Cly had seen. And so it required them all to have an emergency backup. And so as this whole thing unfolded and they finally got the ordinance passed in Allen County, and then it was immediately challenged in court. The ACLU, Planned Parenthood of Indiana, the Center for Reproductive Rights all came to Klopfer's defense and in fact represented him in court. And the ordinance was most likely going to be overturned because their argument was that this is all just, a backhanded way to get rid of the abortion doctor because everybody knows he's not going to be able to find a backup in this pro-life county. And so, in a strange turn of events, to save the ordinance, Jeff Cly volunteered to be Klopfer's backup. It was a very controversial decision that Jeff made. He took a lot of flack for it, but what people really didn't understand was that in order to save that ordinance, somebody was going to have to do that, and he was really the best one to do that. Jeff was going to have to deal with the fallout of Klopfer's mess either way. So, what if he said no, I'm not going to be his backup? Klopfer would still have been operating with zero accountability. If he said yes, I'll be his backup, then the ordinance would be in place, and Klopfer would now be held more accountable.
Oh yeah.
And it just, it's a series of steps through the years that it was, continually tightening the clamp around George Klopfer. And in fact, because they saved that ordinance then, and it took a couple more years, but now Klopfer was being held to account. And then when they found out that he was doing abortions on underage girls and not reporting it to date, as he was required to, that then gave Jeff Cly a good reason to withdraw his backup status, and that shut Klopfer down in Allen County.
Has this abortionist who has now died just recently, within the last several months, was it? September?
19th September.
Oh, September, yeah. Besides taking the babies' lives, did they take any of the mothers' lives? Or were they all saved somehow through surgery, as with Dr. Cly's being the backing?
Yeah, we don't have any direct evidence of deaths of mothers caused by Klopfer.
Yeah.
There was one that we found back in 1979 at the original Webster Street Clinic. Her name was Gail Ann Broman.
Yeah.
And she died as a result of an abortion procedure, but that was before Klopfer was here. And in fact, there's a companion book to the film that I'm finishing right now, and there's a whole chapter on Gail Ann Broman and her story. It's a very sad story, obviously, but so no, I probably if you spent long enough digging, you could tie some, make some loose connections to Klopfer. I know that there have been deaths from abortion procedures that were done here in Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
It's always very difficult to tie it specifically to a doctor, and obviously because of how poor the records are kept, everything is just very in the dark. So to answer your question, no, we could not ever tie any deaths
that he had done. Yeah. I was You talked with Klopfer for how long? Did you get into his psyche and find out why he did it in the first place? Why he aborted babies? Why?
Yeah. So we talked to him for a little over an hour.
Oh, yeah?
We met with him in his clinic there on Inwood Drive. He gave a lot of reasons for why he did what he did, and none of them made any sense at all.
Mm.
But you know, his definitions of when life began would shift depending on, you know, which point in the conversation you were in. It had a lot to do with you know, some of his growing up years.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up in Germany during World War II. He was about 5 years old when he lived through the bombing of Dresden.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely made an impact on him. But following that, he also lived through the Russian occupation. And that made quite an impact on him too. But, you know.
So, Amber, what is your thinking on all of this that you have done? The documentary of this abortionist. What was your thought on this?
Well, it was quite interesting because we went and sat with Kathy in July of 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and then in the middle of July, and 2 weeks later, I gave birth to our third little girl. So we actually started this project 2 weeks before I gave birth, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was only about 3 months postpartum when we sat down and talked to George. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of emotion. I mean, it's a very surreal thing to sit with a man who, you know, kills babies for a living, because that was his only occupation, was being an abortion provider. So it's definitely worth, you know, I think I look at it now as I'm very grateful to the Lord to have been called to do this, and that we could do this together.
Yeah.
And be a voice for the voiceless. Little did we know that 2,411 needed a voice to be heard to go on for generations, so people could really see the awful sickness of
It is a sickness. To me, abortionists, I don't know what their psyche is. I mean, are they mentally ill? Are they angry at the world and they want to destroy it?
You know, it's really interesting, because when we sat and talked to George, he really advocated for a nuclear family, having a mother and a father always present, and because he says that children don't grow up to be functional human beings if they don't have the mother and father present. So he really felt like he was doing a service to women if they were in these awful relationships, you know. But there's so many ifs, you know. There's an excuse for everything.
Yeah. They didn't cause for him to start killing the babies. I just can't grasp why. What, you know.
I don't think any of us can. Any of us who are believers, you can't understand that mind.
No, I
He's
can't.
without the Lord. At the end of the day, he is still a man in need of Christ.
Yes.
And that's
I
where
know.
it ends for us.
All these abortionists and their staff, their nurses, they need prayer.
Oh, yeah.
And they need God in their lives, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you like to say to my audience to encourage them, my dear?
Oh, watch Inwood Drive. Be educated, be motivated, be inspired to see what you can do in your own community, because it is really important, you know, to get involved and reach out to your local Right to Life groups. And
how are you showing this Inwood Drive movie?
Right now, it is streaming on demand on Vimeo. You can go to inwooddrivemovie.com and find a link there. Here, as soon as we all get out of quarantine and everybody gets back to work, it's coming to Amazon and DVD release soon.
So you're not, when everything's okay, no more virus, can you show it around Fort Wayne? Like at the cinema center?
for screenings
Yeah,
and such.
yeah.
Oh yeah. There are churches you can contact us if you want to do a license to view it, show it to your church. Yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you.
We actually had the film done once back in August of 2019, and then everything started unfolding with George.
Yeah.
And he died, and then they found the babies, and so we basically delayed for 6 months while we waited for the rest of the story to unfold, and then we had started going down the path of doing a limited theatrical release, and we had actually done quite a bit of the preliminary work on that with a distributor, and then all of this pandemic craziness hit, and and we watched it. I feel bad for a lot of. There's so many filmmakers that even Christian films that were in their opening weekend when everything shut down, and there's just no way to recover your capital for that. I mean, you've spent so much time and money to market that one event. That opening weekend is so crucial.
Yeah.
And we saw it. We kind of saw it coming, and we were so grateful to the Lord that we felt like we had been spared that. And so we immediately, pivoted back to really when we started working on the film. We said, well, I think this is best served on a streaming release anyway. And so we went back to streaming, and then we found that everybody was pivoting to streaming, and everybody was trying to get on services like Amazon and Voodoo and iTunes.
All domain.
Yeah.
And so for us, it was okay. We can't do theatrical. Let's do streaming. And then the next question was, are we going to sit and wait for our streaming windows to open up, or what can we do now? And we always look at it not as, it can't be done, but how can we get this done? And so we looked at it and went, well, Vimeo on demand is available, and we can start there. We want people to be able to see this. We have people that have been on this journey with us for almost 2 years.
Well, and not only that, I mean, in Inwood Drive, it really cements why voting pro-life matters. We are in such a critical election year. Everyone needs to be educated and informed as to why, and to see exactly how their vote counts and why it matters to go and vote. So it was important to us to just get the film out so people can start sharing it, start talking with people about it, just educating yourself on what it means to be pro-life and in this world, so you can see people like Kathy who are at that level and leading the way. You really need to help out your local Right to Life groups and definitely vote pro-life.
I'm so glad you came onto my show. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
So this is Patty Hunter of Patty's Page with my friends Mark and Amber Archer. Thank you so much for appearing on my show, and we will get this out sooner than later. Thank you. God bless you.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above. So until we meet again, Godspeed, my love. God is with us always for the rest of our lives.